Welcome back, everyone. We're getting ready for our second game in our first best of two Evil Geniuses Academy. They struck, and they struck hard. They got Tony Top on his classic Jack top lane, and in the team fights, they just looked immaculate, especially the Steeds.
There's nothing that I love more than some good Tony Jack's top lane, because it's just a thing of beauty when you see it every single time, no matter the situation. And even though CLG found aggression against it in the earlier stages, it was still just immaculate team fighting that got EG through it. This is that big fight around that Baron buff that really solidified them their advantage in the game. Again, started with Mystique's able to find that headbutt knockup, and then it came through from Tony Top to get the counter strike in the back line. And yes, you've got this range, like Keel and RJS are still able to put out some damage, but it's not even close to enough when you don't have all 5 members able to set up fast enough. That was the little counter punch, and this is Mystique's with a 4-man knockup. This is a thing of beauty also, because Mystique's finds a perfect little play with 4 people, and then you see Tony Top just chads over the wall immediately into the Kindred ultimate 4-man counter strike, 3 kills off the back, which is him jumping into the base, is humongous, and this team gets split into complete pieces, and there's nothing else to be done. It's a little bit of stalling from that point, but really there is not much that CLG can do once that's been brought down, because they just run up mid lane and they end up closing things out in such definitive fashion. And right there, it felt like CLG, they had a couple of attacking plays, but they never really were operating their composition the way it was designed to be played, where you're like putting all this damage in from a range with the Zoe, fighting around these objectives, using the walls to your advantage. The terrain never came into play for anybody except Mystique's and also Tony Top in that last fight. And that was the biggest problem I had with CLG this game.
Yeah, it was a little awkward from them, and a little unfortunate to boot. They had this early lead, and for a team that's unfortunately the split only had 3 victories, but each time with those victories, they were ahead at 15. So this is the first time when they were ahead at that moment that they actually dropped the game and end up losing the Evil Geniuses. So you gotta wonder, what can they do going into the second game? How do they bounce back from that devastating of a loss?
Well, first off, there's obviously like communication and just like tactical decisions that can be cleaned up. There are times where there are plays to be made on the bottom side of the map, right? Now that they're on red side, maybe they can get some more comfort picks, but more specifically, we talked about it just a little bit ago. I want to see them with just something very, very divisive when it comes to their comp. Like, their comp just needs to do something so that they can work towards that condition. I know their sister team, they run like Vi Galio, and it's fight, 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 fight. It's basic, it's simple, but if it works, it works. And if you have to run Malphite, Yasuo, or Orianna for some reason, just to make sure you give yourselves a win condition, no matter how basic it is, that's what I'd like to see, just because CLG doesn't seem to be operating on anything right now.
It's the whole idea of the Bronze Zodiac composition. It's sometimes effective, sometimes it works. You just have a very standard front-to-back team fight. You know how it's going to work every time. Even if your opponent knows how it works as well, doesn't mean that they can generally stop it, especially depending on how they draft themselves. If they are also front-to-back team composition, you just might end up being the better of the two that just can brute force your way to victory. And for CLG, that might be what they have to fall back to. They need something, because when it comes to a lot of their conviction in these team fights, you even saw in some of those fights, so much had been poured in trying to kill Mystique's and Alistar. You gotta avoid trying to even focus him once he pops the Unbreakable Will.
It was tough, yeah. I think Mystique's played really well in that game to be this massive engage in front line, and that's pretty much all EG had. Everybody else was jumping in. Melee, for the most part, kind of difficult to access in terms of like their damage into a team with that much range. So Mystique's had to put a lot of the team on his back right there, and did a very good job being that engage and soaking a bunch of that damage. So big props to him in that one, and I'd like to see them do it again, because obviously it worked out for them really well. I think also the way they played around the Tony Top, Jackson, the split push was humongous for EG. They clearly have some identities that they're able to operate under if they're not just going for that kind of like team fighting style. Splitting this map apart seemed to work really well for them.
And so when it comes to the draft, we're expecting them to swap sides. We're expecting to see that. I just want to see what change comes from CLG, what they ban to take away from Evil Geniuses, because I feel like 11-13 is also one of these patches where there's so many powerful picks to still be able to pick up. It's like, you've only seen a couple of them, you've only seen some players play this, but the fact that like Fiddlesticks is actually considered such an important pick for CLG, yet we didn't even see it touched there. They avoided it completely. It was wide open, and I feel like CLG, as CLG Academy, have looked their best when Keel is on to this Fiddlesticks.
There's a trade-off here where it's like, okay, on blue side, if you're picking Fiddlesticks, they know where it's going. There's almost no chance that it can be flexed into bot lane the way that old Fiddlesticks was able to go to support. So it's information that you're giving away. Whereas when you're picking things like Viego or Gwen or even like Rumble and all these other picks, things like Lee Sin and Nocturne and all these other things, there's so much flexibility. Some of them can be flexed into 3 different roles with very high degree of like win rates and things of that sort. Nocturne specifically is really good about that, being able to play in all 3 roles with very high win rates. And that's the benefit. So like if you're early picking Fiddlesticks before they have a chance to really like, do anything, they can easily try to counteract it with something they've got. I know Olaf got buffed this patch, and maybe that's what they were afraid of. Now that they're on red side, maybe that opening is there from the side of CLG. Maybe they can look for something a little bit more kind of back pocket to give to Keel, like that Fiddlesticks or something else that they've been cooking up in the meantime.
Fiddlesticks, I think Karthus is even one of the picks that they've played to success before. There's just these champions that I kind of want to see CLG be able to run as opposed to trying to go for like a Kindred. The Kindred, okay. It just, unfortunately, it's still Kindred, and if you're not being able to get these stacks early on, I think it was 25 into the game when Keel finally got that 4th stack onto Kindred. When they're taking that long to be able to build up, you're not really going to be able to impact the game. In fact, the game was a 25-minute game, so by the time you got your 4 stacks, the game was already over.
There wasn't a lot of impact right there from that jungle. In fact, actually, both junglers were relatively quiet for most of the game. The bigger thing is that, like, Viego can pop off in fights when you have that, and Keel wasn't able to make enough of an impact to snowball that Kindred the way that it has in previous games, being one of those consistent damage targets. So that's something to consider for CLG is also, how do you actually get interaction with your jungle? Because Keel has had that problem a number of times when he's on a number of champions outside of, like, Rumble, where you can throw an ultimate in, and that's just it. There's a lot of champions that you need to put on pressure with that just hasn't been reached yet by Keel. So I would like to see something that he's comfortable just putting on a flex. You talked about Fiddlesticks, but even like you have to play Lee Sin or something in the jungle, something very basic. If you have to pick it very early to give some resource, do it. Because otherwise, I mean, you don't want another game where you go silent the way that Kindred was and just not have an impact, end up coin flipping, losing around a Baron fight.
So that's just what we're gonna have to see from the jungler. Or we're gonna have to see as we jump into champions, like if that's gonna be the option. I honestly imagine that Evil Geniuses just are going to make sure that they don't have to worry about it by holding on to that jungle pick, keeping it so that you don't know what the jungler is going to be from contract. So, like you mentioned, they're not going to be able to reliably draft something like Karthus, something like a Fiddlesticks, because it can so easily be countered by contract.
EG just immediately gets rid of Kalista. They do not like this Kalista pick. I'm assuming Team Luke doesn't play it, otherwise they would be willing to maybe like look for it or something, but maybe they just do nothing into it. Gwen taken off by CLG, they don't want to give that over. I'm curious if Nocturne lasts for EG, because I bet Tony Top likes to play that as not only like a fighter in top side, but also as a potential flex to Jojo Beyond in that mid lane, or even being able to swap, because they've done that before where Tony Top's played the Nocturne in mid lane, and it's really good as a blind pick, strength into most top laners that you would pick in the majority of matchups. So that's another thing that EG really has in their back pocket. I wonder if CLG actually takes that one away now that they're on red side.
Oh, took a while till we had the first ban, the second ban coming in from Evil Geniuses, and they just take away Ziggs early on. Feeling that CLG, that might be what they wanted to fall back onto, swapping things around, being able to get a nice mid game sort of ADC in big old quotes because it's still Ziggs, which means that Evil Geniuses, I'm wondering if they just immediately are going to try to grab themselves an ADC in this first rotation, try to make it so that they're going to have an easier time for Team Luke. The Ezreal that got banned last time, Tristana, even though they fell back onto the Kai'Sa, I feel like there's just so many opportunities and so many options for Team Luke.
Something to notice is that both Thresh and Aphelios are up, so you could just 2-rotation that if you wanted to from the side of CLG, because Katsuri played it last time, and both Kalista and Ziggs are gone off the board now. Karma's also available, which I think would be perhaps the best counter pick or pick here for B1, because I know Tony Top's played that, Jojo Pound's played that, Mystiques has played that, and that's really important to think about is that viability. Oh, I didn't even realize Zhao was still available. Never mind.
And Zhao. I saw that was open. I'm like, well, that's going to be the first pick. Akali, Renekton, these are the other things that were banned last time that are still open. Wouldn't be too surprised to see this Akali locked in blind, just to make sure they're going to have something a little bit powerful. And I know that I think it's both PN and RJS can play this champion. So they can easily swap that around, see who's going to be the one that they want to kind of give that over to. But since they do know the jungler already, they can actually grab something like this Karthus and feel a little bit more empowered. We kind of talked about the fact that they might hold on to the jungle pick just to see what it'd go against, but they already know.
I'm not in love with that even if it is a counter pick, because it's not. It does, at least it doesn't seem so in my
I would
eyes. If I think
prefer
of
the
Karthus
Fiddlesticks.
jungle,
I prefer the
yeah,
Fiddlesticks.
far, especially in the matchup against Xin Zhao, because Xin Zhao's bullying most junglers as it is, let alone a Karthus who doesn't really have that early pressure. They would need really hard winning lanes in order to work here, which makes me think, I wonder, I know Karthus bot lane has been a thing in the past, and I've even seen a couple of people who are really big fans of it bring it back out. I wonder if Katsuri has that AP backbone to be able to run that, especially because you've given Akali back to the side of EG. You know Jojo Pyun loves that. Heck, you could even just 2-rotation Akali Renekton here and just destroy whatever it is that CLG is going to bring into the lanes, because there's very little that could win those two matchups.
That's what I'm expecting. I was thinking either the Aphelios Thresh could be the two lock-ins or Renekton Akali. And I'd imagine that is going to be the safer bet. There's such powerful champions and laners to be able to pick. The guys, it works, but I feel like the Akali it's wide open. Then you'd have Xin Zhao, Renekton, Akali topside. That is going to make sure that wherever this Karthus is, he's just not going to be able to do as much as he'd like to.
I'm a little surprised that Team Luke decided to go for the Kai'Sa instead of the likes of the Tristana right here. Maybe that implies that EG is looking for a bit more of a dive composition, because Kai'Sa is guaranteed to be able to get onto the backliners and things like the Karthus with relative ease if there's CC into that backline. So now, you also have to consider the flexibility of like Tristana now that CLG's got it, because you could put it into a solo lane the same way. It's really been a lot more of an ADC as of late, especially in the last few patches when people have stopped prioritizing it as like the B1 pick. But it still can be moved into the mid lane, top lane. So there's still quite a bit of flexibility here with these champions where CLG is kind of toying right now with the idea. I'm curious whether that's the case, because I feel like if you put this Karthus directly into Xin Zhao and you give that information away immediately in the draft, you're not doing yourself literally any favors at all. That's nothing but problems. Right. I do like that they're banning these assassins, a way to make sure that if this is a dive composition, they're not going to have continued threat like the Akali or anything else. I can get on backline, kill off the Tristana, the Karthus easily.
No, you've sold me on this. I want to see Katsuri pilot Karthus. I don't know if he's had any time on it, kind of trying to do some research on the side to see, but I just feel like that would be the better option here. Even though Karthus does have this insanely fast clear speed, he is still going to be susceptible to Contracts invading. Contracts is an incredibly aggressive, controlling jungler who likes to be able to put early vision with the help of Jojo Pyun down onto their opponent jungle. So that way they can constantly look for these invades, these early skirmishes, control the objectives, find lanes that they want to be able to play around, and that this Karthus is just going to be so susceptible to an early Xin Zhao invade.
Support is the pick right here from CLG, because you don't want to give that information away. And I wonder if they go for something very safe like Braum, who can try to block some stuff out, or if they go even into like I said, Thresh is still available even to this point. So there's safety for your Tristana or your Lee Sin if they want to jump in, or your Karthus if he ends up getting jumped on. I think both are perfectly fine options. The Braum does match with all the auto attack. Okay, Nautilus. They just decide to not go for defense and they go for full offense.
Well, I mean, the thing is, Nautilus is a pretty offensive support, but the depth charge is a good, like, long-range engage and disengage tool. I always kind of see Nautilus as more indexed onto the aggressive side, but he can play defensively when needed, and this gives him some sort of options to be able to play aggressively, since right now, what would be their other option? A kick from Lee Sin, Buster Shot from a Tristana? You need something a little bit extra on top of that to be able to help out, otherwise they just don't have that ability to disengage or even engage reliably.
Yeah, peel is nice, and I think Nautilus does provide some pretty good peel when you're able to aim hooks and stuff back towards your own team. It's just, when it comes to safety, if you want to play forward into a fight, it's a lot better to have a Braum than a Nautilus, outside of like being able to get a nice depth charge in and things like that for the directional damage that comes through from like what would be Jojo Pyun. Also, the Nautilus really opened up the Leona matchup, and that's something we saw a lot yesterday. That was just disgusting as well. And I know that Jojo Pyun's able to play that champion, and just how insane the LeBlanc has been in previous, with nothing to defend these three laners right now. Now there's nothing to block those Qs and things.
Not at all. And, I'm wondering, Trundle, this has been the pick that we've actually seen pick in it to a lot of Xin Zhao's, and I'm still down to flex that Karthus into the bot lane, but they're not going to. They're going to keep it in through the jungle, keep it for Keel. I would have been 100% for it, but I actually kind of even respect the Ornn. What is this composition from CLG if not late game scaling options? Being able to, again, siege well with the Tristana, but also having reliable disengage and engage from range with both an Ornn and Nautilus on the team.
Yeah, the Ornn, I think, does nullify pretty well the Renekton in the top side. It's also, Renekton isn't necessarily the most comfortable champion for Tony Top. Not that he can't play it, but more so that, like, you don't think of him as the Renekton. You think of him as the Camille or the Jax or something that scales a lot better in the later game.
Fiora, even Wukong. Yeah, these are all the picks I usually think of Tony Top.
And you think about that also, where like early in the game, it should be enough wave clear from Ornn to keep Renekton locked down, and you want to make sure that's the case. The same with Lee Sin, where like Lee Sin can easily die to LeBlanc. That's very simple to do in certain circumstances. It's very easy to just get burst out. We've seen what LeBlanc can do yesterday on Academy, so there's a little bit of support taken away from Contracts, which is big because Keel is in a really bad matchup in that regard. Has to take exhaust, has to make sure not to get engaged on, otherwise you're just going to lose so many camps to this permanent engage that Contracts has. But I still feel like taking that pick and giving that information away so early is really detrimental to Keel's longevity in this game, because again, when you have a Xin Zhao, any support at all from your lanes here is going to make it impossible for CLG's jungler to get anything done.
Well, still like Fiddlesticks, but you know, Karthus, I guess he is a reliable AP source for the team. And I'm curious to see if CLG is going to be able to survive this early game. Diving in to Game 2 between these two squads, it is all about survival for CLG Academy, making it so that they're not falling too far behind. And hopefully we'll be able to get the overlay fixed here for everyone in just a moment.
30 seconds until minions spawn.
I don't like the idea of CLG being a team that wants to survive in the earlier stages of the game. I don't know about you, Mr. Magical, but when I think about CLG and how they've come about their wins, right? It's mostly come off the back of like having the early game advantage and having a definitive early game advantage. And this is not a team that's going to be able to grant that most of the time. So it's a new look from CLG. Maybe they can make it work. Maybe if they get later into the game, the Karthus items with a Tristana, with a Karthus, the damage will start to come through, especially because there's not a really great front line to soak or anything like that from EG. But still, this is a really rough game to play early and mid into.
Yeah, this is going to be a rough one for CLG. I want to see them be able to succeed here, but it is going to be so difficult. And Evil Geniuses are a team that are looking to be able to rise up in the standings. Getting this 2-0 would be crucial for them to make sure they can nearly guarantee they are going immediately to the Proving Grounds. This team that has not necessarily struggled, but constantly been 1 against 1 all throughout the summer, only having to their name right now 2 2-0s and 1 0-2. Everything else has been a 1-for-1.
It has, and it would be a big boost, I think, to confidence to be able to take this win, only because, again, when you lose to FlyQuest in a 2-0, your first one of the season, you can't end up taking one of those games the way you had in every other series. It's got to affect you in some way, and so beating a team that did take a couple of, like, one win and then almost won in a second series this dominantly as EG, if they're able to win this game cleanly, would be huge for their confidence going into the back half of the split, cementing themselves as one of those top half teams, making sure they're not going to fall into having to qualify for the grounds or anything like that.
On the reverse side, CLG, unfortunately, they are struggling here in the summer. They are having a really rough bout of it. They kind of had that similar vibe in the spring, but they were able to find a bit more victories than they had around here. And even the Proving Grounds, they were able to qualify. They were able to go into the Proving Grounds tournament itself after having played in the qualifying tournaments. But they kind of still had that middling success. And I want to see them be able to finally turn up the heat, finally be able to find their stride as a team, as an organization. Because with this composition, and you did ask to see if they could have a more defined win con, a more defined ability to be able to pretty much have a front-to-back team fight, and they do. They have Nautilus, they've got Ornn, they have a Lee Sin to kind of disrupt, while Tristana and Karthus are going to be able to get a lot of damage for the team.
It's a lot of free damage that you can throw into the enemies, right? Because if you die in the correct position as Keel, and if you have PN in the right place to be able to throw an ultimate, you buy a ton of space for Katsuri to walk up in fights. This is a team composition. Again, this they go back to a lot, is putting a bunch of the team fighting into like front to backing and playing a lot more standard around their ADC, like the old-timey like carry everything marksman, like the old-timey Uzi way. That's not exactly what you would think of. You'd normally think of a lot of tanks and a lot of like supports, but it's very similar jungler in this case, because when you've got Karthus to zone champions and to make sure they can't walk up, it does buy space for Katsuri, because otherwise you're getting kicked, you're getting CC'd by all these other champions. So this is a composition that's kind of built on the Katsuri rock, right? And then it's about how well do they get gold into this ADC. Keel is another one of those where Keel can also carry a partial bit of this fight, but I think Tristana is really going to be the focus. So I really want to see them put a bunch of resources into bottom side. That to me is their win condition that they're looking for right now.
Oh, it looks like a nice little bait coming in from the side of Evil Geniuses, but there's a lot that has been flown by Evil Geniuses to survive. The Pebble, oh, barely not going to be able to connect, but getting 2 summoners out of the spot lane and getting more stacked into Keel for that Dark Harvest. Going to make him a lot scarier as right now. Yeah, fighting against Tony Top and getting first blood!
Okay. I don't know exactly how that entire play played out, but somehow it is Tien who's able to chase Tony Top down into the tri-brush and find this kill. I want to see exactly what happened here. I'm guessing it's just all the abilities. Yeah, it's really tough. 2-3 autos for free right there from Tien as Tony Top, again, when you think of him, he's not the most comfortable in this champion. You saw it right there. The flash auto attack with the brittle proc is enough with the grasp for Tien to pull first blood. How is it that Ornn is able to get away with these kinds of early game kills sometimes? It's well beyond me.
And honestly, gotta give mad props over to Tien to be able to get that solo kill. He was a level down too to Tony Top, but still had the confidence now. Mid lane, Evil Genius is trying to get a play back anywhere they can. Ignite is burning, but the shield almost was able to save his life, but now Contracts, you're just dead meat. They're gonna be able to get the technically a solo kill for a hook as Yurjipian trying to be able to escape now. Gonna take the anchor to the face, distortion away, but a 1-for-1 mid lane. This is all kind of favoring CLG once again in the early game.
I suppose you do like Xin Zhao getting that kill as opposed to the Nautilus getting the kill, which is one really big benefit, which is that Contracts is going to be able to enough. But again, they've done nothing to try to aggress against Keel so far. This is the TP and Mystique trying to find some play into RJS as much as possible. That was a really nice X-Blast, actually, to get over the wall.
Yeah, it was really nice to be able to help secure this. Unfortunately, the shield would have been enough to save the life of RJS, so they had to have something happen. But I think, you know, even if it's Hooks getting the kill, even if it's just that, it's at least a trade back and forth for the team. So they're not necessarily falling too far behind, but now Tien, he might just get solo kill. Here comes a Requiem, trying to get the damage onto Tony Top. Cole the Meek helping him out. He's burning to the dominance, not going to be able to get the brittle. He's going to be able to at least get the knockup. Oh, the Bella's Breath, not enough. Tony Top gets his revenge.
Yeah, Keel tries to ruin the one-on-one and give us a little bit more ruining here in the top side in this, because right now we're tied. I think actually, given the previous game, I think he ends up 2-1 in terms of solo kills, but yeah, Tony Top ends up clutching that one. This Renekton pick, still a beast to talk about. Very close, though, as Keel, with some good sense, able to help try to support this top laner as Tien. Again, has been an absolute rock. The CS now, though, has gotten really, really tragic to try to have. Keel is just going to be able to pick up this wave, but you see the advantage that's been generated by Tony Top in terms of that farm, even after that initial solo kill.
So I'm always in the opinion that when you have a tank top lane, they fall behind, like we are seeing from Tien. Not really the biggest deal. It's Ornn. All he has to do in the fight is be a big old meatball, be the front line for the team. Get a CC down. Hell, I actually think that works out well because Keel is in the perfect position to be able to get some free gold for himself and continue to try to get this Karthus in that spot to be a carry.
So far, I don't think EG has done a good job shutting down Keel, because Keel is absolutely slamming in the CS department. Now, in fairness, some of that is the lane farm that he picked up mid lane when, RJS went down right there, when Tien went down, picking up a little bit there. But CLG also equally is not really getting this Tristana ahead, who is going to carry these fights to some extent. So they are relying a bit more on this Lee Sin, on this Karthus in the earlier stages to try to put in some additional work, do some additional damage. Maybe that's their idea, especially if like Tien gets involved, because then Ornn can have plenty of damage with the brittle procs and such in the earlier stages. But neither team has really been successful in finding those particular victories. I would like to see Contracts continue to be aggressive, because that flash E was one way to try to put some aggression into lanes, but I'd like to see some safer aggression, maybe ganks into bottom lane to try to shut down Katsuri, make sure that gold isn't going into the pockets of this primary carry.
I agree. I need to see what Contracts is going to be able to do. Normally, you think Xin Zhao, you think about this early aggressive jungler who's trying to make sure that he can get a snowball for the team, play around some of the weaker junglers. Right now, RJS did take a lot of damage there, but it's still Lee Sin. He should be fine for now, but he will have to be a bit more cautious. I just am waiting to see where Contracts goes first. What play does he try to really help out the team with?
More dueling in the top side here. The Grasp, thankfully, is able to trade back enough health and damage onto Tony Top for TN to back away. But again, when you got shoved, the biggest thing I think is that there is a way for Lee Sin to do well in this laning phase, right? Because there's like ways to duel and there's ways to try to fight. But Jojo Pyun has done a fantastic job constantly putting in damage against the Lee Sin to make sure that he can't really step up to the wave as his melee champion out of fear of being burst out. Right there, you saw the double distortion spent specifically for that exact reason. And that opens up top river in a way that probably isn't in other games. There are games where this LeBlanc probably wouldn't find that same trade damage. RJS would be good. And now, 3 members.
Keel, you gotta be careful. If they jump on top of you, that's a lot of damage that you're now taking, but they're gonna be able to trade it back 1-for-1, and they got the root onto Jojo and trying to be able to get away with the distortion, but the flash coming in from Hooks to be able to take him down 2-for-1, favoring the side of CLG.
Hooks up there much faster, as well as RJS getting the wave pushed back out from his tower means that everybody can show up, and CLG is just faster on the rotation to the play. Rift Herald does not go down. Instead, Contracts and Jojo Pyun give their lives away in exchange for Keel, which is 100% a trade for CLG that they're willing to grab. If they can even get Rift Herald eventually off the back of this and throw it on Tristana, all of a sudden things go absolutely crazy. We'll see. There's just not enough burst in the immediate play. Also, that TN ult that I didn't even realize was just so ridiculously good. TN is insane on this form right now with multiple kills on top side. And then also right there, that support of the play from TN getting the faster move against Tony Top was amazing.
That's what I said about the tank, you know? It doesn't matter how much CS he has. As long as he can get a good call to Forge God like that, he is going to be critical for the success of CLG. You can see now, Tony Top, no dominance, has to flash away. The hook's going to be able to land, so they get the anchor toss as well. The damage going through. Requiem might be able to get enough damage. No, not early. It's too early now, but it will get more Dark Harvest stacks over to Keel.
You know Contracts so badly wants to go and just knock down Keel's health bar, but there's 3 members there with support to be had. So now, it's just not going to happen. Okay, this is actually interesting because Keel wants to start Rift Herald, but if backs do come through from Hooks and TN, they don't have the support for it, and because Mystique was on top side with Jojo Pyun, that means that they can't. I wonder if this does mean that Contracts gets to take this. It's on 1 bar, so it might reset, and if it full resets, there's no way they can grab it. But that's really important. Oh, man.
Oh no, hit reset. Yeah, that's why I was like, I was waiting, I was watching, I was hoping that it wasn't going to for contract's sake, but it did. And in the end, it does seem that they're still going to be able to get it, because if you look at the TP timers right now for CLG, RJS is just coming up, again, just coming up right now. They would have been at a pretty bad disadvantage there, since Tony Top was going to be able to join a little bit earlier than TN. I think that's a wise call from CLG, backing off that one. They should immediately, though, turn for this dragon so they can at least get an answer across the map.
Yeah, that's the loss of the entire situation is, number one, Tony Top just got back up the top lane, so they had this, like, weird timer with, like, this top, where, like, maybe aggression could have come through. I agree with you, don't contest for Rift Herald. But because it got delayed, that gave Keel so much tempo back to be able to not only back and then redeploy, but also took Scuttle, gets this dragon, and is able to do quite a bit with this bot lane push that they were working with right here. So CLG ended up pulling up a fair amount off the map because they were smart about not wanting to over-aggress for that Rift Herald, and they simply didn't have the champions to do so, and they pull off safe resources from the map. That's the cross-map response play we've been looking for, as these two just keep duking it out, man. You are never not auto-attacking each other in this top side.
I like that, too. Jin had missed the knockup, so he gave the scared crab emote. The thumbs up from Tony Top, like, alright, it's cool. It's all good. Though I will ask the observers, just like last game where we need to check in on stacks, it's Keel once more. I want to see how many Dark Harvest stacks he is at this moment. I'd imagine it's about 4 stacks. Ah, wow! I was right on the money on that one. So 4 stacks for Keel, and the more stacks that this Karthus can get, the scarier he's going to be. If he can get up to 10 stacks before we have these full team fights, this Karthus is going to be able to obliterate the members of Evil Geniuses.
And this Karthus is working out so much better than I thought it was going to, because I thought that Contracts, especially Contracts on his out, was going to be able to live in his jungle and just, aggress against him constantly during the course of this play, but just has not had that kind of ability whatsoever during the course of this this game number 2 between EG and CLG. So Keel, either I don't know something about this Karthus pick where you just can't aggress against it with Zin's out for whatever reason, but apparently it's very, very good, or at minimum CLG's playing around it really well. Again, it's probably not the Fiddlesticks, because the Fiddlesticks was amazing. It was gave CLG a lot of their firepower, but still, really impressive stuff if they're able to keep this Karthus going at the rate it is.
Right now, Contract's going to pop the Eye of the Rift Herald into the mid lane, looking to see if they can take these plates right before they despawn. CLG at least have 3 members here, trying to see if they can dissuade the turret from fully falling. Will be able to get a full-on charge there. A lot of gold picked up by Evil Geniuses, but not quite the tier 1 turret.
Yeah, the big thing about that also is the higher health that the Rift Herald is, the more damage it does. If you can knock it down a certain amount, that might have only been 2 full plates instead of the 3 plates that it did end up getting because one of them was partial. That little bit of damage usually comes from just having a bit more on the Rift Herald's health bar. So there is that little interaction, but CLG doesn't care too much. It's a little bit of extra gold that throws in as they go for this invade.
Trying to see if they can deny the blue buff that's so critical for jungle Karthus. No matter how many times he's able to take it, he always will need blue buff. So now they're trying to get a full-on fight. The Six actually jumped in. They have a lot of damage on top of Hook, but still like finally dying to the spear. You can see that Jojo getting jumped on. Nice kick coming in from RJS, but nobody's nearby him. Catcher is way too low to be able to help out. Here's Requiem, who's going to be able to pick up. No one. It's not going to be able to get enough damage onto any of the members of Evil Geniuses.
Very close from EG. It looked like they were playing very aggressively there to look for a dive or something almost, and instead they went for the grump, and then the play was executed by CLG instead. Before RJS could get there, a couple of members went down, and they weren't able to match at all. A couple of plays, which was number 1, Team Blue had an ultimate, and also Dojo hit on Splash and not allow for the resonating strike from Elise to actually get him in the backline. So a couple of nice plays there, as well as well executed underneath that tower. Does grant a couple of camps as well as that kill over to the side of EG against CLG, who've been doing pretty well in the earlier stages of this game, being able to match a lot of those plays. That's one that goes completely unmatched.
It will give that advantage, and you can actually even see that translated to the gold as well. Just with how much pressure has now been placed down by Evil Geniuses, they were able to get most of that gold from the Rift Herald play mid lane. But look at the vision that they put down. Look at the items they now have in their inventory. 4 members having their mythics, 3 members on the side of CLG. So it's not necessarily a massive discrepancy between the two teams. Just enough that if a fight were to break out, should favor Evil Geniuses.
And again, you haven't really shut out a ton of the gold that has come through for Capsuri. If they're able to get Rift Herald, again, I think that's something that CLG should be working towards, only because you really want to be able to get gold infused into this this carry, because Tristana could have been a difference maker right there. So Hook's actually found himself in there.
And look at Jojo Fiona. Oh, Hook. Oh, actually will survive. Mystique's taken low. No one wanting to go over the wall, even though they had the flash in from Hook. They're going to decide not to go for the full fight. Well, bot lane, the full fight does commence coming in from Tony Top, realizing that Tien does not have much room to be able to escape. He has flash, he has the dash if he needs to. It will be able to retain at least the flash for now.
Fair amount of auto-attacking damage coming through, even into the 2 armor item version of the Orange, so at least a little bit of that being kept. So is the Bramble Vest denying a fair amount of the healing, but still Tony Top doing some bullying, given that there's no support. As EG, again, they continue to do this. Now this is what I wanted to see.
This is what we wanted to see. Look at the damage on a Keel. It's a solo kill for Contract. He does have to use the Crescent Strike to be able to survive. As the Requiem, I think, no, it's not going to be useful. He's already dead. But yeah, it's just one of those things. This is what we expected. And this is why we're talking about sending Zhao into Karthus.
Yeah, when you face tank, most champions, when they face tank as Zhao, are going to go down like that, but Karthus is one of the special ones. Like, there's no exhaust either, because it was burnt in that previous fight to try to deny some of the damage and try to help the fight out in general, so Keel didn't have that resource available either. I do like that the blue buff was used as a slow mechanic to get those Qs off, and it burnt Contracts' ultimate at the end is just one little cheeky way to burn that cooldown, but it's not going to make too much of an impact as Keel does get run down by Xin Zhao. This is what I wanted to see from Contracts the entirety of this series, or this game specifically, and has been able to do it, as that's also going to net them this bottom side dragon. The play from Keel to head towards top side, this would be their Rift Herald timer. I'd like to see them go for it if at all possible, even if it means giving a couple of waves or even just a bit of tower gold on bottom side here over to Tony Top, because they desperately need Tatsuri to pick up some of this gold to be able to carry them through these team fights, especially now that Keel has started to bleed out a little bit in the jungle.
This could be risky, though. TP is up for Tony Top and not Tien. If CLG actually do try to fully commit onto the Rift Herald, they'd be at a huge disadvantage. They've already lost the turret, and they can't fight around the Rift Herald. They might just have to forfeit.
And now what was your benefit to throwing Ornn into the bottom side of the map? Because you were losing that tower before he arrived anyway. He could have maybe thrown his ultimate. No TP is going to get Tien to top side. So if you move Tien immediately into the Rift Herald pit, there's so much focus from Tony Top going into bottom tower. You can maybe look for a fight, especially from far out, to try to throw a sucker punch. You kill off T-Move, you kill off Jojo's gun, something like that, and the fight starts to look better for you, and you get that fight win for additional gold in the Rift Herald eventually afterwards, in exchange for Tony Top pulling bottom tower, which he already did, and probably getting the top or the TP out have as well.
Ooh.
Instead, you bled out now bottom tower, mid tower, and you lose your Rift Herald because Tien decided to head to bot side. I don't know whether that was his call or whether it was the team's call, but it was definitely the wrong one right there.
Right now, Tien is trying to be able to survive in the solo fight against Tony Top. He gets a lot of damage with Help the Grass, but with the Requiem, the flash coming in, it should be able to pick up a kill for Keel. Top lane fight continues. Looking to see if Contract's going to be able to take anybody with them. RJS still alive. This flash coming in from Contract. Going on. Oh! He can't get it. RJS barely turns it around.
Pain in a couple of different places. Pain. Not only the 1v1 being ruined on bottom side by Keel yet again, and then the flash also being misused by Tony Top, trying to find the Ornn with the last moments of that ultimate, trying to burn him down. But also Contract's looking in the midst of that to try to find a play of his own, isn't able to kill into RJS, and a couple of kills given back to the side of CLG unnecessarily. This is that play on top side for Keel. Was looking for the ultimate. I'm assuming he gets jumped in at some point during this course. Yeah, that's where he is retreating right there, and this is the play that happened on top side. Not much support. Jojo Pune doesn't really come in too far. Instead, it's just Contracts who's too far up and ends up getting caught out trying to go for this kill against RJS.
And look at this, barely missing the W there. Had that connected, that would have at least been a trade back. So it would have been a 2-for-1 as opposed to the 2-for-none that Evil Genius has had to trade there, getting more sets now for Keel. He's up to 8 Dark Harvest stacks, and we were talking about this earlier. The more stacks this guy can get earlier on, gonna be brutal, especially now that he's got a lot of that magic pen.
That he does. That Blighting Gem with the penetration boots is going to make it really hit hard, especially because you don't have a ton of magic resist stacked on literally anybody. You see Contracts going to take a ridiculous amount of damage. You have Merc Treads, but that's not enough for Tony Top for the most part. You got none on LeBlanc, which is rare. A lot of mages and mage types typically go for Merc Treads against their opposition, but in this one it is the penetration for the LeBlanc to be able to burst out targets, and none so far for the Kai'Sa either. So there's a lot of mean targets here for Keel to go for now that he's got the penetration readily available for all of these enemies on the side of EG. So now CLG, they're pushing with the end. They're trying to keep Tony Top away from the remainder of the map because both of them are very good at team fighting. There's a lot of damage still in this Renekton for the next few minutes before things really go crazy. At this point, I think Jojo Gun is really focused on trying to get into these plays. I really want to see them get creative with these like flank angles. We saw what could happen yesterday. I believe it was Pretty who popped up ridiculously yesterday on the LeBlanc pick, had like 20 kills or something crazy like that.
Not quite that
something
many.
like
13 kills, but
it was a lot.
Yes,
of
he
kills.
did have a lot of kills in that first game. He was definitely impressive, but I agree. I want to see what Japan's going to be able to do with this LeBlanc, because there are some critical targets that he can easily take out and fight immediately. Katsuri being one of them. Keel. If you can kill Keel right away, you have only that little bit of a window with the passive to be able to get anything out, and once that's gone, it's going to be a while till you're useful again.
The important one, I think, mostly is Katsuri, because if you can find Katsuri before a fight really starts to take off, then immediately the entire, like the backbone of the fight here from CLG gets removed, and that means that Keel's got to do a lot of work, but Keel's usually going to be positioning aggressively to try to find Qs and Es, so if he has to play on the back foot, away from the rest of his team, where there's like Tien who's going to be in the front, RJS is going to be in the middle of the team, Nautilus usually going to hook in the middle of the team, you don't have that much support to work with, and that's the problem that you're going to run into if you're CLG, you lose that. So Jojo Gun has a fair amount on his shoulders right now to be this assassin, the way that LeBlanc is meant to be played, has the same build path as what the Karthus does right now, so you know that this is a ridiculous amount of damage that can be brought by the LeBlanc in these fights if you find the right angle and if you find the right target.
Going to be able to connect, looking for the damage, and they're going to be able to just blow up Tony Top. 9 stacks now, count of 9 for Keel, looking for the fight on Contract. Contract juggles in the air, trying to be able to survive. The Solar Flare was able to disengage for now with the Aggressive Streak. Trying to see if they can jump on top of him with the rocket jump, and look at Katsuri's damage. He flashed forward for it with the Requiem on top. They're going to be able to pick up a kill before it comes through. And Toad takes a lot of damage with the kick away. Going to be followed up and Six is dead. Team Luke, where you got to run, boy, you got nothing you can do. 10 stacks now for Keel. The Baron being up, CLG, they find a decisive fight.
Jojo Gun trying to carry a little bit more by finding a chain out of Katsuri, but it's just not going to be enough, and now the consistent damage is there. Keel is alive and Katsuri is alive, and that's everybody you need for this Baron to come through, as CLG has finally made it 23 minutes in. It feels like that fight win might have been enough to give them complete control of the game, not just in terms of gold, but in terms of everything, as their scaling is starting to come through.
Oh wait, Katsuri, he just jumped on. He saw Tony Top there, wanted to be able to get a kill on to Jojo, was able to get the passive, but now Baron on to, I think, at least 4 members of CLG. Huge fight for them to be able to win.
Absolutely. And this came off the back of, like, you're just walking blind each division around this bottom side dragon. You end up getting burst. This was ridiculous for Tony Top to just get removed like that. Again, no resistances really to speak of, so it's easy for Katsuri and Keel to work through that. Nice play from RJS, sets up the orange to be able to work forward. And again, who is actually fighting? Because Contract's the only frontliner. That's the only one you got. He goes down really early. That's why Katsuri is able to find this flash, these Qs, these auto attacks. The ultimate from Keel would have been enough if that wouldn't have done it. But again, it's just them finding target after target because the front line just isn't there for the side of EG. Yes, Team Blue finds a nice kill, but it's too little too late because CLG's already won the fight, and with these consistent damage dealers alive, they easily take Baron.
And before that, we didn't even get to talk about the fact that they had already given the ornament over to Keel. Getting that Eye of Luden to start off the fight, that increased amount of gold essentially that you get for free just for having an Ornn on your team. And now the upgraded Kraken Slayer too, they have so much extra gold that accelerates the late game that they have been wanting to be able to play around. Look at this. You have a Magi's now for Keel. He's feeling that confident with themselves. You got the Phantom Dancer completed for Katsuri. They're at a sizable gold lead too, and with the game being 25 minutes in, it feels like it's way later just because this composition is able to come on the line so much earlier for CLG.
It's near impossible now to deal with the scaling that are coming through from the side of CLG. The only option that EG's got is to try to go for things like these picks, where, like, you've got great damage on Tony Top still with this Renekton who's gone for triple AD itemization. You've got the Collector on the likes of your Kai'Sa who can put out some damage, and most importantly, Jojo Gun, who we've highlighted a couple of times. If you find the right target, can absolutely put out damage like nobody's business, but you have to find the right angles and the right vision to be able to get onto one of these very primary targets that could win you a fight.
Look at what Tien's built. He's got the, what is it, Anathema's chains as well. I'm not sure who he tagged on that one on the enemy team to be his nemesis, but he's got even more that he can do in these fights. It'd be so much more difficult for them to kill this fabulously built up tank in Ornn.
Good question. I mean, you could put it just directly into Tony Top, but I think at this point you're worried a lot more about team fights, so it's probably just on Kai'Sa more than anybody, because you're not super concerned about the LeBlanc putting a bunch of damage into you. But yeah, the new itemization can deny that damage.
Double knockup with Requiem as well. They're going to be able to get a rampage for Keel. Contract trying to be able to get away. He just does not have the damage. And then Team Luke gets punted back towards the team. 3 kills picked up by CLG. They're knocking at the door of Evil Geniuses, trying to be able to bring back the series after a cataclysmic Game 1. Here in Game 2, they have accelerated it with the Carcass, with the Ornn, with the Tristana. They're already knocking at the game, trying to see if they can just take it. They've gotten the kill onto Jojo and the flash away from Mystique underneath this fountain. The game is over. CLG, they've been able to drag back this game. The Carthus pick, it works out fabulously to make sure they go 1-2-1. Mystique's not gonna die at the end.
Extremely impressive play from a couple of members. Every fight that EG was looking for usually got responded to, even though CLG messed up a couple of times or wasn't able to pull back something. That team fighting at the end, their scaling all came through for themselves. The game was too quiet. They shut down Contract's ability to do too much in the earlier stages of the game, and EG could just never take advantage of the small advantage that they had pulled at the beginning. It was, what, 2,000-3,000 gold? That's not enough to spike you ahead of CLG's composition, and there you go. The ornaments came in, the scaling was there, and CLG takes a game in similar fashion to what we saw in Game 1 from EG.
And EG continuing their trend of 1-1 weeks and having a bit of an unfortunate Game 2 for themselves. They would have loved to be able to get that 2-0 to continue to climb up the ranks, but CLG got to give mad prompts on how they're able to play the second game. When we look at the replays of this, the early game was dicey. It was a little bit weak, but they were able to hold on and survive.
Yeah, the amount of times, this is the really big play that kind of did it for me at the beginning, where, like, they go on to Keel to try to find this aggression, but this amazing ultimate from Tien being on the faster roam timer than Tony Top was massive, and I don't know that they were prepared for this. EG definitely wasn't, because they got caught off guard completely, and yes, there was a bit of advantage. This was the fight that really cemented things, because again, out of vision, Tony Top, now your frontliner's gone, and there's nothing else for you to accomplish inside of this fight. If you're the side of EG, you need to rely on being the first ones making a strike with Jojo Pion or something like that, or Contracts jumping into the enemy team, so you don't have to soak some sort of engagement.
So yeah, it's a crazy game here from CLG to be able to drag back this game. and make sure that they can win. Like, this fight was just wild. It was all over the place, and it started off with Tony Top just getting caught out of position. You kind of called it in Champions, like you weren't really confident in this Renekton pick.
Yeah, in fact, actually, both their solo laners didn't look super comfortable. You saw right there, actually, Jojo Epcon, it was one chain, I know that situation, but there were a number of times where it felt like Jojo Epcon didn't look super duper comfortable on this LeBlanc alongside that Renekton, and so maybe some of the comfort wasn't there from EG the way that they thought it would be. The draft looked pretty good on paper. If they got the LeBlanc out of lane, which Jojo Epcon was doing, alongside contracts aggressing constantly, there would have been a lot more control in that earlier stage of the game, but again, somehow CLG found some counter blows enough to get them out of that early and mid game without too many strikes, and they were able to get themselves in a position where that team fighting was just way better than anything EG could provide.
Right, and the thing that's really impressive is the fact that they were able to survive. We talked about that at the very beginning, that they had to survive, and you weren't as confident on that one just because it is also a rough position to be in. You're told all you have to do is survive against a composition that wants to be able to fight you early on. The Renekton, the Xin Zhao, the LeBlanc, they constantly want to try to see if they can get these early kills. But we just didn't see the aggression from Evil Geniuses, and it allowed CLG to pretty much play their composition to a T.
Yeah, and I got to give props to Keel because, again, this isn't an easy game. When you've got a LeBlanc on the enemy team, when you've got a Xin Zhao on the other team, it takes a lot of stones to be able to say, I'm going to take Karthus and I'm not going to die in the earlier stages or get bullied out or go down and farm because I'm just getting pushed out. But, man, it worked out. Keel did really well. His laners did good to support. Again, big props to Tien, who was able to support a couple of those fights with this Ornn, get that solo kill on top lane. So lots of CLG doing better things, and then Katsuri eventually also getting into the game, being equal with a lot of the other members to put that DPS out as necessary with the Tristana. So really, really big props to CLG's adaptation for Game 2. Their composition wasn't necessarily easier to execute, but there was a more clearly defined game plan in their team fight, and it worked out for them. Maybe this is something they can build on for the future to work more towards these team fighting, Ornn and things like that, to be able to pair together for future.
Yeah, it just seems that when they're able to get Keel onto these not necessarily unheard of junglers, but the more niche ones, the Karthus, the Fiddlesticks. I still would have liked to see the Fiddlesticks here just because I think it would have helped accelerate a little bit earlier. But either way, it doesn't matter because the Karthus was able to do exactly as he needed to. He had a lot of damage that he was able to provide for the entire team. He got early stacks on his Dark Harvest, so by the time he was given the Eye of Luden, that upgraded Ornn item, he was perfect. He was set. He had all the magic pen he needed. Nobody was able to really do anything to him because even if you jump on a Karthus, you kill him and he's still alive.
And it's back to the drawing board now for EG, where it's like, okay, you'll take the 1-1, you'll be happy with your first game win because it was a really convincing one. But it felt like Game 2's composition was harder to execute, and especially after losing 0-2, you really wanted to make this week into a 2-2 situation where you could have won this 2-0 against the weakest team, or at least currently the bottom team in the league right now. So there is that to consider as well. The EG, what was it about Versatile Game that really did well for them, and can they continue to play like that on blue side? Do they have these picks that they're comfortable on in these blind matchups other than like the Renekton and LeBlanc and things? I like the testing of things, but certainly back to the drawing board to try to kind of composition that does better into the later stages, because it didn't work out in the earlier phase. I don't know if that was contracts, what happened with him, because again, there was a fair amount of discrepancy in terms of CS even early on into the game between the likes of the Xin Zhao and the Karthus as well.
All right, I hear for our Verizon post-game interview, we actually have Keel on the line to be able to ask him. I know we want to pick his brain, especially around that Karthus pick, but first, before we do that, Keel, gotta ask you, how's it feel to be able to bring back that series and make it 1-1?
It feels good. Like, it's been a rough week of spins, but finally getting.
Cannot hear him on our end. Keel, give us just 1 second. I think it's mostly on our end. Here, try to go again.
Hello?
Gotcha. There we go. So same question.
Yeah.
How's it feel to get the 1-1?
Feels pretty good. Like, it's just been a rough week, so at least getting one win, definitely good for morale. Everyone feeling good around here?
And, coming out of Game 1, where it was a pretty divisive win from the side of EG, what was it that you guys came back to the drawing board for? What was it that kind of kicked you into the, okay, let's just win this game by doing this? What was it that set you into the mindset proper so that you could take that game in really, really convincing fashion yourselves?
I think we just kind of resorted back to comfort and just scaling, just have pretty bad scrims this week and just been pretty hard, so just kind of went to comfort and playing champs that we know we can just force a win on.
And speaking of comfort, gotta talk about the Karthus in that second game, because you guys locked it in pretty early, and we had been questioning it just because Karthus into Xin Zhao does not seem like it should be a favorable matchup, but you were able to hold the line and do well. So what is your thoughts about that matchup?
Yeah, a lot of people think it's a counter, but Zinja's farm's too slow. So if you just survive like the first like 8 minutes, you just win the matchup. I think it's fine. He just has to go into you, and Karthus likes being dove. So yeah, I just play a lot of Karthus, and I played the matchup a lot. I think it's just fine.
Sure. And then finally, I guess just. Go ahead, Alex. I'll let you do it.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to let you go for it. But yeah, just looking at how the series goes and how you guys are going to go forward. I mean, you talked about how it's been a little bit rough, but being able to get this kind of victory, are we going to hopefully be able to see you guys start get up in the standings a little bit more, especially because it seems like when you have a composition like this, you guys work incredibly well as a unit.
Yeah, I think we're going to pull it together. Today, or even just this week, coach was sick, and then we came off an 0-4, just a really rough week. So I'm pretty sure we're scaling hard for the rest of the season. Pretty confident.
All right, good stuff to hear, Keel. Thank you so much for joining us. Sorry, it's a quick little interview, but I hope you have a good day. Is there anything you want to say before you head out?
No, that's all. Just believe in our team. I think we're not the worst team as it is right now. Thank you for the interview.
No problem. I'm looking forward to how you guys do for the rest of the split. Keel, thank you so much for joining us for an interview, and have a good day. And for that is going to be that series. We already got a 1-1 series on our hands. 2 quick games, too, which is surprising when you have a 1-1 series. Usually, you have both games being really close, but the Evil Geniuses were able to get a really decisive game 1, and then CLG throwing it right back in their face with a decisive win themselves.
I think the best part about those 2 games, so there were some really exciting fights. We actually got into the deeper 3v3s, 4v4s, 5v5s that looked really exciting. So there's a lot to live up to for these next games. I want to see even more action if at all possible. I know these teams are capable of doing so, but to live up to the team fighting expectations that we got, especially out of EGA in game number 1, is going to be there. But I have expectations here that are high for 100 Thieves, Team Liquid, FlyQuest, and the rest of the games that are going to come on today.
Oh, same here, especially our next best of 2.
Oh, yeah.
Team Liquid Academy, 100 Thieves Academy. That one is going to be spicy. Battle towards the top. But before we dive into that, we're going to toss to a break. When we come back, we'll get ready for that second best of 2. So stick around.